The world situation is at a breaking point. How many times have we heard that over the years? Practically since I was old enough to have any comprehension of the news. And yeah, increasingly we are looking at the real possibility of worldwide breakdown, politically, socially, culturally, economically, ecologically, ideologically. We're at a tipping point with, so many things. What have we got going on? We got the woke agenda versus the pushback in the Western world. We got the whole Palestine thing, and we got the India, Hindu-Muslim thing going on and on. What about this one? Scientists are increasingly having to face the fact that their insistence on matter being all in all, there's nothing supernatural, there's nothing spiritual, is collapsing. Maybe it's too soon to say collapsing, but it's under intense pressure as their increasingly speculative theories meant to deny God look increasingly untenable, especially in the face of so much good science pointing to supernatural dimensions. So we, the followers of Srila Prabhupada, who are the inheritors of his mandate to make a Vedic renaissance, see that there is great possibility of introducing Krishna consciousness all over the world as the perfect alternative to this totally insane and increasingly imploding materialistic civilization. We have the perfect knowledge, the Vedic knowledge. It's perfect for this world, how to live in this world, varnashrama, how to prepare for the next, knowing that there is a next life, and there will be next life after next life after next life. The world is largely ignorant of this, so there should be a Vedic renaissance, guided by the teachings of His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada, founder Acharya of iskcon. This should lead the way. But are we, the members of iskcon, the followers of Srila Prabhupada, are we ready? Srila Prabhupada's teachings can be analyzed in three main categories: spiritual, social, and personal, which are all interrelated, but the spiritual, obviously, are the most important. We will be ready to give the knowledge to a world that so much needs it if we present his teachings unchanged, undiluted, that we are all spiritual beings. We are not these bodies. We are part and parcels of the Supreme Living Being, Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And human life is meant for God realization. This is the essence of his spiritual teachings. His social teachings center on re-establishing varnashrama dharma, the perfect social system given by Krishna himself. Unfortunately, I can't say we, but as an iskcon policy, the whole mandate for reintroducing varnashrama dharma has been totally abandoned, and instead we are trying to fit into the increasingly confused, demoniac civilization. On the personal level, instead of teaching people that we should live a life of purity, sinless life. We try to reach out to people, outreach, with all kinds of nonsense about personality development. And let's get in line with Srila Prabhupada, have faith in what he gave, teach what he taught, and take his mercy to lead the re-spiritualization of the world, to save it in its darkest hour. Varnashram dharma is central to this plan. We cannot call ourselves Srila Prabhupada's followers and go on year after year after year ignoring his instructions about establishing varnashram dharma. Within our society, iskcon society, there's a resistance or a misunderstanding or a confusion or apathy, whatever you want to call it, about varnashram dharma. Of course, we may say, well, how do we go about establishing it? Well, let's look at that. Srila Prabhupada was very practical. He didn't want to introduce anything impractical. At the same time, he never said that we should just become totally theoretical and learn so much Shastra and have so many classes with no practical application. Sometimes we saw that if Srila Prabhupada was asked a theoretical question, even on Shastra, that had no application to what we need to do in the here and now, what Srila Prabhupada would get angry, seeing it as an inappropriate question. His thinking, Srila Prabhupada's thinking, and was how to apply what Krishna says. Not how to apply what materialistic so-called personality development and all this kind of thing gurus say, and try to somehow link that with Krishna. But Srila Prabhupada's approach was to give what Krishna says and how to apply that in this world. Srila Prabhupada repeatedly emphasized to us the first teachings of Bhagavad-gita. We're not the body. We have to surrender to Krishna. He quoted Gita so much. He quoted so much from the first canto, second chapter of Bhagavatam. We see some great leaders of our movement wanting to run ahead of Bhagavad-gita and jump into the esoteric pastimes, which might make us feel good, but first we have to see, have we applied our understanding, or do we understand even chapter 2 of the Gita? Or to speak of going beyond chapter 2. We're not the body, we're eternal, spirit, souls. Of course, the chanting that Srila Prabhupada gave us, the chanting of the Hare Krishna mantra, requires nothing preliminary. Of course, it's very helpful to receive it from a pure devotee or someone who is purely trying to communicate that. But Srila Prabhupada, again, he was very practical. He saw, what are we doing with the rest of our lives? How many times did Srila Prabhupada quote, Manmana bhava mad bhaktaha? We should mold our life in such a way, Srila Prabhupada says in his purport in Bhagavad-gita as it is, we should mold our life in such a way that we cannot but think of Krishna 24 hours a day. That means we have to live in such a way that is conducive for being in Krishna consciousness. When Srila Prabhupada was personally present, most of his disciples were living in temple communities. Nowadays, not. Most are living as part of the materialistic civilization. I'm talking about how we live, how we maintain our lives. We used to live very simply by necessity because we didn't have much money. iskcon is rich now, and we live like rich men. Srila Prabhupada did too. Of course, in the beginning, he accepted living in very difficult, practically poverty-stricken situation so he could introduce Krishna consciousness. But later, he accepted opulent quarters, but then he would live in them for the sake of inviting respectable people for preaching to them. And we see just in the last year before he left this world, he lived for several weeks in a mud hut in Bhubaneswar. He would say, one day we are sleeping on the floor in a humble abode, and the next in a marble palace in luxury. To Srila Prabhupada, it didn't make any difference. He remained the same, transcendental and detached, thinking, Krishna has provided this, whatever the situation is. But we tend to become attached to all the facilities which we're supposed to use only for Krishna's service and think that we're entitled to it or we have to have it. But what about that simple living and high thinking that Srila Prabhupada spoke about? Was it just something that he spoke about? Did he really? Yes, he really meant to introduce it. How many leaders in our movement are instructing their followers to follow and apply the varnashrama instructions given by Krishna? We're devotees, we think we're devotees, and sometimes we're told that, well, we're devotees, we're above varnashram. Well, maybe theoretically, but we see in the whole of Bhagavad-gita, Krishna tells Arjuna again and again that he should work as a kshatriya for him, for Krishna. We shouldn't be endeavoring for wealth. It's okay if someone's already wealthy and they can use that for Krishna. But Srila Prabhupada, he was actually very cautious about seeing his devotees so much involved in money-making. There was a good business at one point, this spiritual sky business, which was making good money. But for Krishna consciousness, but Srila Prabhupada is very concerned that devotees not get too much into money consciousness and become money conscious instead of Krishna conscious. Srila Prabhupada fearlessly instructed businessmen in different parts of India to use their money for Krishna. He told people in the villages, don't do cash crop farming. Grow your own food. He told the villages in India, in Mauritius, those who had factories, Srila Prabhupada would tell the businessmen, okay, use it, teach your employees to chant Hare Krishna. But Srila Prabhupada was not in favor of this industrialized civilization. He called factories dungeons for demons. Krishna, we learn from Srila Prabhupada, he says it in Bhagavad-gita, he recommends as the basis, the economic basis, not rubber tires, or we can say in the present age computer chips, but agriculture and cow protection. And if there's some excess production, then there can be trading of grains and dairy products such as ghee. Who's talking about this? Who's even mentioning it? We hardly hear it at all, but Srila Prabhupada was talking about it a lot. Those who are his followers, or supposed to be his followers, should know this, and the leaders should be talking about this. Srila Prabhupada was ready to dovetail the bad bargain of being stuck in this nasty civilization, so-called civilization. But he was pushing, demonstrate something better, make farm communities, show how we can live simply, simple living and high thinking. On January the 3rd, 1975, in Bombay, Srila Prabhupada said, "By nature's way, Krishna has given us everything. You can simply work a little and you get food grains." Krishna says like that. Krishna never says you open big, fierceful, horrible industries. You will never find it in Bhagavad-gita. For your livelihood, Krishna says a very simple method. Anad bhavanti bhutani. Anna, grains, food grains. You produce anna. Why are you planning big industries? In Srila Prabhupada's own words, the next phase of the Krishna consciousness movement is varnashrama dharma. He also said that restaurants, Krishna conscious restaurants, and preaching among scientists is the next phase. So that's there. But even the restaurants, Srila Prabhupada's plan for the restaurant is that we would have our farms, they would produce food, and that would be used in the restaurants in the cities. He said the farms had to be done, establishing the varnas. We hear about varnashram, we hear about brahmachari ashram, grihastha ashram. Sometimes we hear a little bit about vanaprastha ashram, sannyasa ashram, but the varnas, that has to be established. There's no varnashram without varna. And even for the ashrams, if the varnas are not in place, then the ashrams are not going to work properly. Varnashram, the ashram is for evolving in Krishna consciousness. And the varna has to be there to situate ourselves in a position in society in which we can contribute to society according to our psychophysical makeup. If there's no proper establishment of varna, and that means not everyone's going to be a brahmana. If there's no proper establishment of varna, then the ashram life is full of all disturbances. We tend to think that we can solve all problems by economic development. If we have money, that's what we need. Money, that's the answer. If we have enough money, we can solve all the problems. But in the Vedic society, and pretty much all traditional societies, day-to-day problems, lifetime problems, there wasn't money, there wasn't cash. It just didn't exist in society for most people in most of their dealings. So you may think, well, maybe there was barter, but that's also a kind of economic exchange. Most of the relationships in traditional society, and especially in Vedic varnashram society, was not on money and wasn't on barter or either, but on reciprocation within the community. Everyone has their role to play. There are barbers, there are potters, there are farmers, there are teachers, but in the present day, the whole world is consumed by this money culture. People in the modern world think that money is all there is. And if they think of some alternative society, they tend to think in terms of barter or exchange. All social and economic relations are contracts based on money. Even marriages have prenuptial agreements all about money and property. But the Vedic society is an integrated society in which there are Brahmanas, Kshatriya, Vaishyas, and Shudras, and the leaders, especially the Brahmanas, they are giving. As a child, the boys as brahmacharis have to learn, and then their life is meant for giving knowledge, performing pujas and yagyas for people's benefits, or they may be astrologers. They give with little or no concern about taking or getting. Their needs are taken care of. They're confident of that, but they're not greedy. They're not in anxiety. And everyone in varnashram society has that. Kshatriyas, they may live opulently, but their life is dedicated to the society, just like the father is dedicated to the children. The father has more privilege within the family, but he has more responsibility also. So it's something like that. The parents, Srila Prabhupada gave these examples, that the parents selflessly serving the children, or the bodily parts integrate, serve each other. So everyone in varnashram society, they may not even intellectually understand it, but it's just ingrained in their consciousness. We're here to serve collectively under the guidance and under the leadership of those who are complete givers, under the guidance of the Brahmanas. This is what Brahmanas are supposed to be. And everyone gets their fair share equitably. This is equity in varnashram culture. Devotees should be internalizing this consciousness and setting up communities in which we can live in this consciousness. But it seems that devotees, maybe more than others, instead of having a devotional relationship, everything seems to be a business relationship. The education, first of all, you have to pay, then you get education. But Srila Prabhupada said that education should never be charged for. For that matter, not medical services or astrology. There are circumstances that are abnormal. Well, the whole modern world is abnormal. There's no proper community. But what we have, a money culture in which devotees are making businesses almost exclusively focused toward making money from devotees, that exploitive spirit of the money culture, the business culture, directed toward devotees. Especially the supply of essential services and commodities should be arranged for, available for everyone. Vedic communism, Srila Prabhupada spoke about this. He didn't like Marxist communism, but he saw that the idea that everyone should be provided for, not by the state. It's not some big top-heavy system with some bureaucrat sitting far away, but locally, the arrangements were there, generation after generation, that everyone is provided for. Some get more, some get less. It's not that everyone's equal. Putting that in place is a big job, no doubt. We're a long way from it. We don't even have a basic understanding of it or inclination toward it, but that is the mandate that Srila Prabhupada has given us for revolutionizing the world on the social level. We need to undergo a massive change in consciousness from money consciousness. Everything we do, what's in it for me? The consciousness of taking, what can I get? We have to undergo a big difference in consciousness if we're actually going to be brahmanas and lead the world by spiritual strength. Brahmana is meant for leading society, not by giving useless leadership seminars, but by actually implementing varnashram society. But we're so far away from that. From the very beginning of our life in this materialist, demoniac culture, we're indoctrinated in the mentality of what's in it for me, the taking mentality. The modern education instills in this, drills into us this taking mentality. The average child by 15 years of age has at least 15,000 hours of schooling. And that's all about how to get ahead or at least survive in this culture in which everyone's an individual struggling to survive, to take more from others than they take from you. Of course, most just become totally exploited. And to be an employee means that your employer gets more from you than you get from him. He gets significantly more. And there's constant tension between employers and employees. But the culture is there. The so-called culture in modern life. The idea that we should have education for moral character, selflessness, how you can be a servant of others, that's not there at all. Even among devotees, they're pushing the children, work hard, study, get a job, earn money. And children spend as much time even out of the school on screens. That means computer screens, mobile phone screens, and cinema screens, TV screens, and all the time we're being fed these subtle and gross impressions to train us to be a demon. According to the Bhagavad-gita definition, what's in it for me? Taking, 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 competing with others. That impression is so deeply in our consciousness that instead of providing a positive alternative, it's completely spread throughout most of iskcon's attempts at doing anything. And it's completely taken over the official iskcon education system, even though Srila Prabhupada wanted Gurukul. Now what we call Gurukul is just a mundane school teaching mundane subjects with the idea of sending the poor children off to the mundane society. Oh, but a little Hare Krishna thrown in as well. Even when we try to apply this, what we call education in spiritual fields, it's all concerned with how I can earn a living, develop skills so you can earn a living. Who's prepared to be a real Brahminical Vaishnava? I mean, someone who lives a humble, simple, basic life, just with the minimum necessities, not endeavoring hard for more and more money, but being content with very little, and instead of putting our consciousness into all that anxiety of having more money and a so-called good career, put our consciousness into cultivating Krishna consciousness. We live life in the taking, exploiting mentality instead of the service, giving mentality. The service mood, the giving mentality is the foundation of Krishna consciousness. And the Varna system is based on this mood. And that's why it degraded into the caste system of exploitation when that mood is lost. So it is our mandate, establish varnashram, varna, and ashram. This is necessary for devotees also. If we're to escape this, if we are to escape this demoniac mindset which we're so deeply steeped in, only in a varnashram system can we be free in our daily lives from the mentality of taking, and we can live as givers. We're always thinking on the social level how to give more rather than take more. But we're trapped in the exploitive society, the society based on ignorance of our relationship with Krishna, and we're in that mood, work hard. I've got to struggle in this society, the taking mood, all day, every day, and somehow whatever little time we have left, how are we going to switch to the mood of giving, which is Krishna consciousness, serving Krishna selflessly? Srila Prabhupada wanted to establish varnashrama dharma by first of all establishing a class of true brahmanas, which doesn't mean just putting a thread on people because they pass some exam so they can get a thread. But taking a Bhakti Shastra exam doesn't qualify you as a brahmana. We actually have to develop the qualities which Krishna has given in Bhagavad-gita, the 9 qualities, so that we can be fit to lead society. Lead, the idea of being a leader in Vedic culture is to be a giver, not to be a dominator. All devotees, even if we don't do the work of a Brahmin, we should have this Brahminical mood. They may be fighting like Arjuna, or they may be an outcast. Haridas Thakur was by birth an outcast. But everyone has the mood of serving. So this idea that everyone has to be a Brahmin, reading and studying, that makes you a Brahmin. But okay, but what about the voluntarily mood of living simply? Controlling the mind and senses so that we can be first class 24 hours a day servant of Krishna. Again, not everyone's going to be a Brahmin by engagement, but the idea that I have my engagement, but I'm here to serve. Kolavecha Shrita made leaf cups and sold vegetables in Bengal 500 years ago. You can't make much of a living selling banana leaves in Bengal, where banana trees grow everywhere. Even if you don't cultivate them, they'll just pop up. If there's a little soil, they'll come up. He was so poor, he was famously poor, but he still gave 50% of his tiny earnings to the service of the Lord by worshipping the Ganga. Who even talks about giving 50% of one's earnings or any percent of one's earnings? How many speak of giving at all except those who come around collecting? I don't see many devotees who are really trying to cultivate these qualities of a Brahmana. Shamo dhamma tapa shocham kshanti arjavam evacha jnanam vijnanam astikyam brahma karma svabhavajam. And those who are doing business, doing business for serving Krishna, or Vaishyas, if you have that Vaishya spirit, then what about Krishi, Goraksha? These are mentioned first, Krishi, Goraksha, and then, which means agriculture and cow protection, and only third is mentioned Varnija, business. These are the real businesses of a Vaishya. Who's going to preach, as Prabhupada did? Where does Krishna say in the Bhagavad-gita to get an education and a job with technology, or nowadays jobs talking on the phone with international call centers, whatever? Who's going to say that? Why can't we speak these things? Are we afraid of losing followers? They may not take it up. Most probably won't, but unless we speak about it, no one will have even the idea of taking it up. We have to speak what is appropriate for everyone to hear, but if no one speaks these things who are supposed to be followers of Srila Prabhupada, then Srila Prabhupada's legacy is lost and it becomes Sakale Neha Mahata Yoga Nashta Parantapa. Why? Are we attached to the donations we get from our followers? We're afraid of being ridiculed or whatever. Srila Prabhupada gave the example of one Brahmana living in Krishnanagar, and the king came to see him and said, well, how can I serve you? What can I do for you? And the Brahmana said, nothing, you can't do anything. And the king, who's used to living in so much opulence, he was astonished. How can someone live like this? Well, he lives in such poverty. But the Brahmana didn't mind poverty. My disciples, the brahmacharis, they go out and beg some rice daily. And there's a tree, we take some leaves from it, and we live like that. Srila Prabhupada also gave the example of Chanakya Pandit, who was the most powerful person under the Chandragupta Maurya, the king, but he always maintained his independence. He could have lived very luxuriously, but he maintained his independence by deliberately living poorly, and he didn't depend on them. He was independent. He gave the advice that they needed, not that what they wanted to hear. He couldn't advise them properly if he was dependent upon their money for maintaining a comfortable lifestyle. So he lived very simply in a little hut. He was internally satisfied with whatever God provided. He wasn't a Vaishnava. He was equipoised. Whatever God sends, very good. So he was happy with that, internally. Unless one is in the mode of goodness, satisfied with whatever we have, then we can't be externally, unless we're internally simple, we can't be externally simple. Therefore, Prabhupada said, we're going to teach how to live in the lap of material nature and depend upon Krishna. So Chanakya was an example of that. He controlled his senses. He was a Brahmana. He didn't increase his material situation. He didn't improve his material situation, even when there was ample opportunity to do so. He refused to do so. So at least we have to absorb the essence of that mood. Otherwise, how can we progress? Anyabhidashita shunyam. We shouldn't think that, well, as devotees, we need to have good jobs, lots of money, middle class, prestige, or more. We can read and study, but application and realization is needed. It is wrong, it's misguiding to teach the opposite. And out of whatever, fear, neglect, not teach these important topics. Rishabhdev, Bhagavan, said that anyone who applies their intelligence for economic improvement is mad, crazy, insane. Very interesting. They say, oh yeah, very interesting, for armchair students. But Srila Prabhupada didn't want armchair students. He wanted to demonstrate how to live in the lap of material nature and depend on Krishna. That means to accept Krishna's plan, not just accept Krishna's plan of living on the land, farming, agriculture as the economic basis of society. But not just accept it, but be happy in it. Be happy with what Krishna has given. We don't need all these fancy gadgets. And you may say, well, I'm talking all this is hypocritical because I'm using so many gadgets to talk all these things and have it broadcast, recorded and broadcast. Okay, I'm doing that. And I'm accepting money. And if you give money, I'll take it. In fact, I do want money. You can give as much as you like. Of course, I don't want to spoil your family maintenance, but yeah, we do need money. But why am I doing this? It's the example of the wood is used to make a handle for an axe to cut down the tree, which is wood. Otherwise, we don't need all these things. I can live without these things. But we're using it because we are constrained by this demoniac civilization, so we can take the things that the technologists produce, use it to put the message across. But this isn't our plan. This is not Krishna's plan for how to organize a society, to have more and more technology. Krishna's plan, what Krishna gives, the land, the air, the water, cows, varnashrama system, is perfect for helping us to live peacefully with a calm mind, which is suitable for practicing Krishna consciousness, depending upon Krishna. Simple living is Krishna's desire, his plan, his arrangement. We should at least begin to talk about it, but we have to understand how it is practical and show how to practice this. Srila Prabhupada wanted to show how to live on the land and depend on Krishna. You may have studied Bhakti Shastra. You may be a well-known, popular preacher. If someone comes to you and asks for advice how to seriously improve their life so that everything is connected with Krishna, what will you tell them? Put a picture of Krishna in your office as you're working hard all day for some materialistic boss? Will we advise them that Krishna says the economic basis of society is farming, agriculture, cow protection? Can we show how by farming and agriculture and cow protection there is prosperity in society? We don't have to be super brilliant, super educated to live on the land with some cows. It takes some know-how, but by Krishna's arrangement, the land produces food, the cows produce milk. We may not live very luxuriously and opulently by modern standards, but then that's not our aim of life. Simple living, where is that? iskcon's a rich society, and we're all living very opulently, and we're very concerned to have all the best of everything. And we just take it for granted that life in iskcon means we should have the best of everything, the most expensive of everything. Well, not everyone's like that. I myself don't try to live like that, but there are leaders, or whatever you want to call them, who are living opulently, and it's quite visible that they like to always go to live in expensive hotels and always have to go in some fancy big car. There's not anything necessarily wrong with that, but if it's completely dovetailed in Krishna's service, but it doesn't set the example of the simple living that Srila Prabhupada wanted to bring in, to establish. And it seems like among some leaders at least, it's so much part of their way of life that they just expect it and take it as normal, that they always have the best facilities for everything, very, very costly, unnecessarily. So let's at least start to think about these things. Let's get over this hatred of varnashram dharma, Krishna's program, Prabhupada's program. Hatred, I say, because it's systematically ignored by the leaders of our society. I've been pointing this out for a few years, not only myself. And now there is some show of some interest in varnashram with a committee here or a little resolution there. They're not taking it seriously. They should do, if we are to be followers of Srila Prabhupada. Otherwise, we become asar. If we don't follow the Guru's order, then we become asar, useless. And the mission of re-spiritualizing the world, there's tremendous possibility all over the world for giving Krishna consciousness at the present time. But we're not able to do it. Unless we can show something practical, alternative society. It's already given by Krishna. It's already given by Srila Prabhupada. Let's do it for Krishna. Let's do it for Srila Prabhupada. We may not be going through the official channels, but let's do it. Do whatever we have to do to fulfill this unfinished 50% of Srila Prabhupada's mission. It's going to be a big change in your lifestyle, yeah, and tougher for the women who are indoctrinated into think that they have to dance on the heads of the men, stomp on their heads, more difficult for them. But yeah, that's all part of the package. It's all Krishna's arrangement. Take it as Krishna's arrangement. Don't be rebellious against that. Hare Krishna. Vancha kalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhya eva cha